My name is Sven Wysotsky. I'm in Nokia as a product manager for NSP. And what we do in this demo here is we show hierarchical control using Nokia's NSP. Then from Cisco, we have NSO, and we manage devices here from Ciena. What we show is that we use NetConf and YANG for the communication, and also we use widely open models from ITF and OpenConfig. Handing over to Rob.
Hi, thanks, Sven. My name is Rob Skingsley. I work for Ciena as a systems engineer in Europe. Now, what you're basically seeing on this model here is a fairly simplified network. It shows a couple of test sets hooked up to a pair of 5164s with a transport network of an MPLS segment routed network underneath it. We will basically be processing the NetConf transactions coming down from the Cisco NSO, and from there, the devices will start forwarding the traffic per the service requests that are coming down. And from here, I'll hand it over to Jan.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Jan Lindblad, and I'm working for this TailF group in Cisco, working with NSO. Before we get into the steps 1, 2, 3 to 6 here, we will go to the Ciena device and see that everything is clear. There's no traffic flowing or anything. I'll show you in NSO that we are in sync with the Ciena devices and that there is no VPN configurations. And we'll go back up to the NSP system and see that everything is blank there. And then we'll show in NSP that we are sending down a service order, high-level service model service order to NSO. NSO will then receive that order, allocate the resources necessary for provisioning this network, and then send out multiple device configurations as a network-wide transaction using NetConf. And then we'll see on the Ciena devices how those device configuration orders are received, and the BGP L3VPN is set up on interfaces, verbs and BGP verbs, and eBGP peering, and so on. And after this flow has been done once, we will be sending more service orders from NSP, creating and deleting network at will. So we will see how we can both add and remove networks. And even though they have overlapping resources in the network, NSO will then manage and make sure that all these resources are taken care of in a good way. And then we'll show on the device level and on the monitoring that traffic is flowing as we are adding and removing services. And at the end, we will remove all of these services and see that everything goes back to what it was. And with that, I'll hand it back to Rob again, so you can show your Ciena setup on the lowest level.
Thanks, Jan. Right, so what you're seeing on the screen now is I split it up into 4 sections. The bottom 2 sections will show the devices where we can correlate what's being sent down from the orchestration systems. To the top left, we have the telemetry monitoring based on GNMI. And here we're using some open source applications just to pull the data from the devices real time. To the right, it's the 5164 device itself that we're using today. It's a purpose-built for 5G networks. It does front-haul, mid-haul, back-haul. It can do hard and soft slicing using various technologies like FlexZ and segment routing. And it can handle various speeds and feeds of up to 200 gig. So down the bottom, as you can see, we're monitoring the telemetry at the top. And if I look on the bottom here, we can see literally that the subscriptions are being made. And at the same time, we can look on the device and see that we have, for example, no BGP VRS currently. What you will notice on the top, though, before I hand it over, is that we have traffic coming in on port 1 at the top. Here that we've got 7 gigs of traffic coming in on one side and 6 gig on the other. And as the services get spun up, we will start forwarding that traffic across the network.
So before we go up and look at the service orders being issued, I just wanted to show that NSO has no configuration running at this point. So the first thing I will need to do is to show you that the Ciena devices are in sync with NSO, or NSO knows what it is. So Ciena 5 sync from and Ciena 6. So now NSO knows exactly what the configuration is on these devices. And I can show you that there are no L3VPN services at this point. And with that, let's go over to look at NSP.
Within NSP, the first thing we look at is what is configured between NSP and NSO. So I have here the NSO view using the configurator application. So if I look into it and I look for the services that are configured at the moment, we can see that the list of configured services is empty at the moment. What we do next is we prepared a couple of what we call intents in the intent manager. The advantage is that doing it, we can pre-configure all the attributes, but in this case, you can see that the state of those services is not present, which basically means that those services are not yet deployed into the network. If we look into the details of those services, we can see that there is a configuration, for example, in this case for a service called CAL, which has two sites. One is called SFO, the other called PAD, on a Ciena 5 and Ciena 6 device. And if we click here and do an edit, we can actually see all the details that we actually have defined, like CE and PE addresses. To push the service into the network, we just flip the state from not present to activate. And then we basically push it into the network. Once this is done, we can take another look into the model device configurator here, and then basically sync that view. And what we can see now is that the service is actually published into the network. And also what we can see is if we look here into the sites, we also can see that there's two sites now configured, PET and SFO. And with that, I hand back to Jan, I think.
Thank you, Sven. What you can see now is that there is a system message coming in from NSP, and that was triggering the service application running in NSO that provisioned the Ciena device. And just to show you that, I can show running configuration L3. You see now that there is a VPN called CAL. It has a site called PET sitting on the device Ciena 6. And you have some IP address details here and the MTUs and stuff. And then the other site here called SFO sitting on Ciena 5. So this is what we got as a service order on the IETF L3VPN service model. And then if you want to see what that means on the network, what NSO translated this into, I can show you that too. L3VPN sites SFO get modifications. Oh, like this. And then we can scroll back a little bit here to see that this service footprint in the network was going to Ciena 5 and creating all these things with the plus sign here. So you see it created a verb called CAL with some route distinguishers and IP addresses for peers and some descriptions and all these things here. Created an interface. It went to a logic port that already existed, but it changed the MTU on that and saved what the old value was, so that when we remove it later, it can put that back. And this was then pushed to the Ciena device, and let's have a look at that. Over to you, Rob.
Right, so as we can see straight away, we've already got traffic running across the network now. We're roughly transmitting a third of, well, it's probably exactly transmitting exactly a third of the amount of traffic coming in, because that's the way the traffic tester was set up. So we can see literally on the device that we now have a BGP VRF configured. You can see the route distinguisher, route target information, same on the other side. Okay, we can look at the eBGP peering of the VRFs, and we can see here that we have a eBGP peer established out to the tester to do the route exchange. Same on both sides. We can also see, and we can compare these values against what Jan was showing a second ago in NSO. We can also see here that we have a new interface on VRF CAL, and there's the IP address there, and the same on the other side. That's pretty much all I need to show you at this stage, and I'll hand it back over to Sven.
Okay, so next we want to do is creating 2 more services that are pre-configured in the intent manager already. So we can see here's one service called outer and another one called sol. At the moment, they are not present in the network. So let me go here and flip the state for those services. So I'm going here to activate those services. So let's push first the outer service. And then doing the same for the other service as well. So saying activate, pushing it to the network. And once this is done, I can check back in the device configurator app and check what has been published to NSO. And I can see now that 6 sites have been deployed. And also what I can check is there should be 3 services now in the list, Cal, Outer, and Sol. And with that, I hand back to the NSO team.
Thank you, Sven. And here on the NSO side, we can see that 2 transactions have come in, one for each of these networks. And I can show you just briefly L3VPN. If I just do site device, and then you can see just the device mapping for this legs instead of many pages of service definitions here. So we see we have a site called Mercury, Neptune, and PET. They are all sitting on the same device, Ciena 6, and they're sharing some resources there. And then we have 3 sites sitting on Ciena 5, it's SFO, Uranus, and Venus. And NSO is then mapping out the configuration to each of these services on top of Ciena 5 and 6, as we saw earlier. And let's have a look at what the network looks like, Rob.
All right, so now we can see straight away that on the devices here, we've got full traffic coming across the network. Whatever we were sending in is now coming across. We can now see that on the devices, we now have 3 VRFs running, Cal, Outer, and Sol. We have 3 eBGP peers now established to each of the different VRFs that are running on the network. We can see the same on the other side as well. We also have a lot of more interfaces now than we had previously. We can also, because the 5164 is a NETCONF driven device, we also have full logs of what was provisioned at any particular time and by which orchestrator in this case. In this case, it was coming down from the Cisco orchestrator on the NSO. And you can see the commands that were sent to do that, both cases. All right, so now I will hand this back and we will start to drop off some services.
Now let's pick one of the services to delete it. I go back to the intent manager. Now we pick one of those services. So let's pick the middle one here. I go here and I flip from activate to not present. And I basically push that change into the network. So give it a sec. So I will validate with the device configurator app. So, and if we refresh that view, we can actually see that the middle service has gone, right? So just to remind, in this case, we are using an ITF model for the configuration. So that is RFC 8299 at 3SM. And with that, I hand over back to Rob so that he can basically show what happened on the device itself.
So straight away, we can see here that we're already dropping some traffic on the ingress now. So we've dropped 1/3 of our traffic. We can see it stepping down here on port 4, which is the network port. We can see on the device itself that we only have the 2 VRFs running now. We've dropped off an IP interface. We had 3, we're now down to 2. And we can also see that we've had a deletion message go through here to remove a VRF from the system. And Jan will show us the correlation on NSO now.
What we can see here is a transaction has come in, and we can show the list of sites that are up now. You can see it's only 4 now: Mercury, PET, and SFO, and Venus. So 2 legs, 1 VPN with 2 legs is gone.
As a final step, what we will do now is we remove the 2 remaining services just to see whether there was any impact on the configurations within NSO or on the Ciena devices. So to do this, I basically go back to the intent manager and I flip the state from active to not present. So I flip it for the first service. And we are doing it for the sole service as well. And now we check back what we see here in the configuration app. So I can see all the services disappeared and also the site list is now empty. And with that, I hand back to Jan so that he can show the same from NSO.
Thank you, Sven. As we can see down here, the 2 transactions have come in, and I can now show that, yeah, there are no sites left here. So L3VPN service is just blank. And I also want to show that we are in perfect sync with the devices. So all the configuration has been restored. If we go to devices, device. You see NSO and the device is perfectly in sync. There's no residual configuration or anything anywhere. So Rob, go at showing us what it looks like on the device side.
Well, Jan, there's very little to show here. There is nothing left on the device. You've cleaned it all up. We've got no traffic flowing anymore. We have no VRFs configured anymore. We have no IP interfaces anymore for the services. And we can look at the NETCONF logs and see the second deletion message coming through here and here for each of the 2 services. But apart from that, my node is exactly the way it was configured prior to starting this exercise today. From here, I hand it back to Sven for a quick wrap up, I guess, and thanks for joining us today.
Okay, to summarize what you have seen in the demo, we actually created services in a hierarchical manner. So we used an abstract data model between NSP and NSO, and then NSO was pushing using the device model towards the devices. We have seen that creation and deletion of services works, not just for a single service, but multiple services. And we have seen even on the devices itself, it was real hardware routers, and we have seen that traffic was forwarded between the 2 sites. While finally, we then removed the services and the service configuration was looking as before. Thank you for joining the demo. I hope you enjoyed it.